I found out my boss is my biological father and he had an affair with my mom. I've always been close to my mom, but there were parts of her life she was very secretive about, especially anything related to my biological father. She always told me he wasn't in the picture and that it was just the two of us against the world. I never pressed too hard, respecting that some things were painful for her to discuss. Fast forward to a few years ago, I landed my dream job at a well-known company. My boss, Mark, was one of those people everyone either loved or feared. Charismatic, successful, and a bit intimidating. Despite his tough exterior, he took a particular interest in mentoring me. He'd always say things like, "I see a lot of potential in you," and "You remind me of someone I used to know." I thought it was just typical boss talk to motivate an employee. But then, things started getting weird. My mom became noticeably anxious whenever I mentioned my job or Mark. She'd change the subject quickly or make excuses to avoid discussing my work. One day, she even snapped at me saying, "Why do you talk about him so much? He's just your boss." Around the same time, Mark began acting even more strange. He would ask personal questions about my childhood, my mom, and even things like where I was born and when. It was like he was fishing for information, but trying to be subtle about it. This went on for months, and I could tell something wasn't right. Then, during the company's annual holiday party, Mark had a bit too much to drink. As the night went on, he pulled me aside and said, "I need to tell you something important, but not here. Come to my office on Monday." I was confused and anxious, wondering what on earth he wanted to talk to me about in private. That Monday, I went to his office, and after a long, awkward silence, he finally said, "I think I might be your father." I felt like the ground had dropped out from under me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mark explained that he had an affair with a woman over 2 decades ago, someone who had left suddenly and cut off all contact. He'd always wondered what happened to her. I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing, trying to process the idea that my boss, someone I looked up to professionally, could be my biological father. I asked him who the woman was, and when he gave me her name, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. It was my mom. I left the office in a daze and drove straight to my mom's house. I confronted her, and after hours of denying it, she finally broke down and admitted that she had an affair with Mark years ago. She found out she was pregnant shortly after, but decided to leave him and raise me on her own. She was terrified that Mark would try to take me away from her, or that he wouldn't want anything to do with me, so she kept it a secret. I was furious, confused, and hurt. I felt betrayed by both my mom and Mark. I didn't know how to move forward. Here I was, working for the man who might be my father, and neither of them had told me the truth. I ended up taking a few days off work to process everything. When I returned, Mark apologized for how everything had come out. He said he never wanted to cause pain and that he only suspected I might be his child after getting to know me better. He asked if we could do a DNA test to confirm it, but I wasn't ready. I needed time to figure out what I wanted. In the end, I agreed to the test, and the results confirmed what Mark had suspected. He was my biological father. The relationship between the three of us has been strained ever since. My mom and I are working through our issues in therapy, and I'm slowly trying to build some sort of relationship with Mark, though it's complicated. Work has become a minefield. Mark tries to keep things professional, but there's this underlying tension that's impossible to ignore. Some days I wish I could just leave and start fresh somewhere else, but part of me feels like I need to confront this head on. I'm still trying to process everything and figure out what my future looks like. I never imagined I'd be dealing with a situation like this, but here I am, living a real-life soap opera.